Shut up and sit down.
And we are back. Listen, we haven't been gone so long that I have to keep going in. We're just going to, here's Wes, who's never really left. Digital Reporter. So again, Trevor, I know you're fascinated by the person and I by the journalism. Because the Digital Reporter part of it, how long did it take to get used to the majority of your things are not in the paper, this tactile feel, right? I've gotten used to, like, I might be on someone's phone or their TV, but it takes a minute. How long did it take for you to go, wait, I don't have it in my hands? Is it really a thing?
Yeah, it's taken me, honestly, about probably 12 years. I remember in October of 2009, the Green Bay Press-Gazette forced me and all of the other guys to get Twitter accounts, and I did not want to get a Twitter account. Did not understand the point of it. Didn't know why I would be trying to put my stories on this social media thing rather than just telling people to read the paper or go to our website. But that's been the transition. And the thing that's fun about it too is, like, with the way I went to University of Wisconsin Green Bay here in town too. So I'm true and true Green Bay. And, you know, the way my degree worked, I was a communications major, but they have all these different emphases. And I didn't do broadcasting at all. And I would never say I'm a broadcaster. But we've all been thrust into that role now, because it's not just about what we write. My first 9 or 10 years at the Press-Gazette, I don't know if my face was ever even in the paper, let alone, you know, being told to go do podcasts or do videos or things like that. But that's become what this thing is now. So when I got hired here in 2016, I originally started as a staff writer, and it was kind of the snowball effect over the last 3 years where it was just more and more type of, you know, live streaming and Q&As and, you know, doing pep rallies and things of that nature. So eventually the position kind of grew into that. So you got to be a multimedia journalist in 2022. It's the way things are. And it's just, you got to be willing to adapt to it and at least try to bring your personality into it. I'm not ever going to say I'm a professional. I'm no John Anderson, but I just try to make sure that I'm Wes.
I don't know what that means. But I just know it's different. And my guys that worked at paper all the time, and they're like, now I get it, but it's just, I publish something and now my phone starts beeping. And so I know people are watching it, but he goes, for so many of us, and I say, so I'm 56. Like I still like to see it in the paper. You know, there's something, and you're old enough still that, you know, a byline meant something.
Absolutely.
In the paper, and now it's completely a different deal. So, Trevor, I'm sure you have some sort of Packer nonsense that you'd like to get to, though.
He was mentioning earlier that he was probably sitting 100 yards away from where Mercedes Lewis was sitting, and it is not lost on me, Wes, that you're sitting in Lambeau Field, right? I mean, and you're behind the scenes in Lambeau Field. You are places where people will dream to be every single day and never get to. So what are some of the behind the scenes things about working inside Lambeau Field that Wisconsin would die to know? Pick a few.
The coolest thing is still watching game days come together. That is by far walking in. Just walking in. Yes, the smell of brats in the air and all that stuff, and just hearing people go nuts outside is great. But once you walk in the stadium and just see, you know, the officials meetings, even the testing for like the national anthem. I mean, just to see how all these different elements come together just for a football game. That was a thing that until I started covering the team full time in 2012, that I never really appreciated. And then just seeing a bowl with absolutely no humanity in it, no bodies, gradually fill up to almost 80,000 is still one of the coolest things that I think I've ever experienced. And that's the fun part. You know, when you write the stories, you do the press conferences, it's long days during the season, 6 months, usually the way this has worked with the Packers recently without stop. But those are the days that I think you kind of long for. And then also just, I don't see it as much now, but the inner workings of a locker room. And, you know, when we were down there and, you know, I used to be able to eat in the team cafeteria before COVID, just seeing guys come in and the relationships that are formed off that and the conversations and, you know, the Green Bay Packers, their facilities there, it's not like the Dallas Cowboys or something. Everything's just sort of right there. The weight room is right next to the lobby. The lobby is right next to the cafeteria. The cafeteria is right next to the player lounge. Across the hall is the locker room. Everything is right there. And, you know, that is, you know, you see the outside, you see the guys in the uniforms, you see all that stuff, but everything that goes into those 3 hours every Sunday is, I think, to me, one of the most awe-inspiring type things of covering the National Football League.
Wes, you and I go back. Ironically, all three of us were probably at the Green Bay Bullfrog Stadium in 2010 for John Anderson bobblehead night.
That's true.
You have been here for a really long time. and you've covered a thing or two from basketball to junior hockey and now the Packers. Is it ever lost on you, man, that you literally do drive to Lambeau Field for work every day? I mean, you grew up here. You went by the facade as a kid, and now you park in the parking lot and walk in and get paid to go there. I mean, like from a Wisconsinite standpoint, that just doesn't compute for me. Well, tell us about that.
Yeah, that's the wildest thing. I mean, 16 minutes from Lambeau to my house, assuming that's not the 5 o'clock, traffic there between Lombardi and Mason.
Then it's 18.
Then it really backs up.
Wow.
But I want to tell this story quick and this isn't just the shine on John, with it being your guys' show, but I'm 5'0", 100 and nothing. I was never an athlete past 6th grade. I did curling in high school. I mean, I there's no athletic paralysis in my body whatsoever. But a lot of kids in Green Bay grew up wanting to be Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre. I wanted to grow up being John Anderson. I wanted to grow up being, Stuart Scott and Kenny Mayne. And but I wanted, this is what I wanted to do. I love sports, and it didn't have to be the Packers. I loved covering high school wrestling. I loved covering the Green Bay Gamblers and St. Norbert hockey. And those are things that when I got my teeth into a beat, I really enjoyed. And to be able to have the opportunities to climb this thing up and not get laid off at any point. Unfortunately, a lot of my friends and peers in the journalism, newspaper industry, it's kind of happened to them over the years. That is something, Trevor, that I never take for granted. And the fact that I've been blessed and fortunate enough to actually work here, to have a desk right outside the studio, to be able to write any story I want. Like, that's the other thing too. People always talk about, you work for the team, and that I can write any feature I want. Nobody ever tells me, okay, you got to write this on Aaron Rodgers. You got to write this on Devontae Adams. If I think there's something cool I can do and I can execute it, I have the leniency to be able to do that. And that's the only thing I've ever wanted to do. I love telling stories. I love covering sports. And I just love being able to find a way to actually make a living off of that. And to be able to stay in Green Bay. I have so many of my friends that have had to do internships in Seattle and in New York and been down in Florida and back. And to be able to be here for this thing the entire way, that's a dream come true. That's what the way you draw it up when you're trying to have a vision of what you want to do for a living.
Well, listen, we need to hook you up with Kenny because he'll just make you laugh, and he'll tell you how he knows Dave Craig from Tiny Milton College, which is one of his favorites. And there was no better human being than Stuart Scott. I miss him every single day. There's pictures of he and John Saunders, not many, but I make sure when I go to the calf, I touch those every time just to stay connected when you go through. What is deadline in this job? Yeah. Right. Cause it's different.
Yeah. It's making sure I get home at some point. Everyone always jokes about, newspapers has changed now, right? Because it's not really even the same thing. When I left the Press Gazette, we still were trying to, not Hail Mary, but the actual Hail Mary in Detroit in 15 happened. And I was trying to write a running game story on that. And then everything changed and Richard Rodgers caught that ball, right? And I was always trying to hit that. We don't have that anymore, being in a website-based sort of element. There wasn't a print, deadline. You're not trying to get anything out to go anywhere. But I do have a lot of interns around me, and I have a boss around me. They all want to go home and see their families at some point. So that almost pushes me a little bit more than maybe even back during the newspaper days and trying to make sure we get things out. But all joking aside, it is about immediacy. And the thing is, especially in this day and age, with as many different outlets as are out there, you want to be able to get your information, your content up as quickly as possible, especially after games. I mean, a good friend of mine and mentor that works for ESPN.com now, Rob Domofsky, he has his thing where he's getting his final gamer up, his recap story up almost immediately after the game ends. And then he has to go, do the news conferences and the Zoom calls. That's the way things are now. It's not just collecting your quotes and, going back up and getting a soda pop and some popcorn and then casually writing. You're cramming. So that's probably the thing that pushes you the most, knowing that the sooner you get something up, the more eyeballs will be on your product.
So yeah, Domofsky, A+ dude, right? You can't beat him. So Pete Doherty, Missouri, same class. I don't know that you remember, but we spent time in bars at Blues games many times with a mutual friend, a guy named Steve McCall. Congratulations for being in that group and keeping your head of hair. Right, that's amazing compared to those other two class. Right, but yeah, Trevor, you'd fit right in. You should have been the Wes is the guy that doesn't fit with that group when they come through. But think about it. How are you going to get to the cream of the crop at Missouri? I'm there. Doherty's there. Pat Forty's there. Listen, people, we meant business back in the day in the mid '80s when we came through. Those guys are terrific, but you work every day in the same place as the guy that I read when I grew up. In Cliff Crystal. Now, by the way, back when I got Packer coverage, it wasn't like you guys are amazing. In training camp, they're like, Jordan Love today was 12 of 14 on passes in a 7-on-7 drill. Like you guys put everything down. Like before, I'm like, we never knew what David Whitehurst was throwing in 7-on-7 drills. And that was when they, it was caveman type stuff. But to work with Cliff Crystal, who is a guy that is like, listen, first off, you're not writing for the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? You are a piece of history, and I'm sure that is part of your thought every day when you step into that building, that you're 100+ year legacy in this. But what has Cliff Crystal been like to work with and sort of be in contact with, and just this encyclopedic knowledge of this franchise? Yeah,
Cliff, I love Cliff. Man, I hope you guys, maybe at some point we can talk to him and have you guys get him on, because man, I get kind of emotional about it. I've known Cliff for a long time, never worked with him. He was wrapping up his career right when I basically was starting it, but him and Pete are really close. So I got to know Cliff pretty early on, and I remember being so intimidated by him at first, because he's an imposing guy. And if you know anything about his stories, I mean, he can tell you some incredible stories. Cliff is a bulldog through and through. He is as hardcore of a journalist as you're ever going to find. He wants to get information right, and as you mentioned, this organization's and this franchise's history is so rich and so deep, and Cliff wants to make sure that it's correct. He just wrote a 1,000-page book at his age, to make sure that he gets that right. But it's also how humble he is, and how much he is such a throwback to guys that you're talking about, bylines, guys that just wanted to be able to report the news and just be able to give people accurate, trustworthy information. I don't think Cliff would have ever cared to be in front of a camera. I don't think Cliff ever felt like he needed to be a brand. He just wanted to be able to be a bulldog and do what he loved doing. And he's wired differently too, man. I mean, he went down to the felt so many times with guys, and he did not back down from those fires. And from just a human standpoint, and how much the Green Bay area means to him, how much, Green Bay East means to him, you're never going to find a better human being. And for a guy like me, that is just a 30-something nobody that is just kind of scratched and clawed to be where he's at, being able to go to Cliff for anything, any Packers history type stuff, and have that kind of conversation, it's a treat. And honestly, these last 6 years of being able to work alongside him has just been incredible.
We got to finish one up here real quick. If you thought I was spinning, I was like, no, I have a follow up with this.
Got it.
Because I don't buy this humility, which is great that I'm a nobody. But if you're 30 and you follow this, right, think about this. Here's a franchise that is a century old, but we're going to trace this line. And if you don't feel this pressure, I hope you go home and you have it now for the next 15 decades. But literally, if you go the Press Gazette and the Packer relationship, we go Lee Remmel to Cliff Crystal to Wes, and dude, this may be your baton for another 40 years. So that's all I'm telling you. But really, there's that connection, which is really unique. But we might be able to do that. We might be able to trace this franchise both with the Press Gazette and with the Packers with 3 dudes.
Yeah, I
no pressure.
Don't screw it up.
Yeah, don't mess it up. I think about that a lot, especially, when I was at the Press Gazette, I wrote Lee's obit, and unfortunately, that's why I'm so happy that Cliff wrote that book. That's currently out. Be sure to check it out. It's incredible. I edited a couple chapters. I'm waiting after the season to finish up the rest of it. The biggest tragedy we had was Lee Remmel never wrote a book. Lee wrote a lot, and he's basically was etched all upon Packers history, but he never wrote a book, and I really wish he would have, because the amount of history that was lost with his passing is, you can't. The stories I've heard from people that have recounted his stories, Lee was incredible. And I always thought about that a lot, John, because not necessarily, I'd never put myself in the category either of those guys, but to be able to start at the Press Gazette and then come over here, that means a lot to me, because newspapers meant a lot to me. I wanted to work in newspapers. I wanted to be the sports editor of the Press Gazette. That entity, If I would have been born 25 years earlier, I could have worked my entire life there. But unfortunately, a couple things happened, and thankfully, they're still going, and I cheer for them every single day. I have so many good friends over there. But for me, my family, my wife, my son, we had to make a decision. We felt like, it's Green Bay Packers. You can't really get more job stability than that.
Right.
So here we are. But for Lee then making the jump, and then certainly Cliff, finishing up an incredibly decorated career here. It's amazing. And I really appreciate being able to connect those two dots from the Press Gazette to working here.
Future Packers historian Wes Hodkiewicz.
There you go.
I don't know if I'm going to stick around that long, Trevor.
I like it.
No, we've spoken it into existence.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
It's in the universe now.
All right, we'll wrap it up with Wes in just a bit. Come back on. We're Inside Wisconsin.
Inside Wisconsin is brought to you by Baycare Clinic, Cobblestone Creek, the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, Mill Home Supper Club, Festival Foods, Capital Credit Union, North Star Mohican Casino Resort, American Family Insurance, Rolltech, and by Miller Lite.
Helpful critiques, ideas, great stories, people we should know, the great bar in your town, the fish fry you want to know, the fish boil, anything that you want to reach out to us with. We are happy. We are here. You can be the inputters. We're here to listen.